happened to print out the nutrition facts on that healthy snack Dr. Czer was having as he would walk down the hallway. This is a king-size Snickers bar. Nutrition facts.
The jumbo one, yes.
I know, I was just going to point that out to you, that the carbohydrate load in this healthy snack you had, which happens to be low glycemic, it just was a bit of a high volume of carbs, was 56 grams of carbohydrate. Wow. Any of you that are eating a bar right now, how many grams of carbohydrate are on that label on the back of your bar? Does anybody know? 14. Okay, so I want to tell you something about that. The magic number around helping you get your cholesterol where it ought to be is never to have more than 14 or 15, it's 15 is what I tell people, 15 grams of carbohydrate at a sitting. So obviously, Dr. Czer knows and knew that it wasn't his best health option. But when we look at how would you turn the whole boat of cholesterol around, what we've both seen in our practice now is that over and over and over, if we can help people adopt a new lifestyle program where they're loving themselves with feeding themselves with a healthy amount of food every 2 to 3 hours, that 15-gram amount of carbohydrate is ideal. And what does our program have? Every meal replacement you eat is exactly the amount of carbohydrate you need for optimal brain function, but making your body not make excess cholesterol and lowering those particles. I noticed today also, this morning, the coroner released the autopsy report on Carrie Fisher. And the first line says, died of sleep apnea and other causes. And we were both talking a bit about sleep apnea. It's another incredible scientific breakthrough of our program over some of the other methods of management. Greg, how's that going for you with your patients?
Well, that's one of the, we always talk about blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes when we're talking about health effects of being overweight or obese. But as a lung specialist, what I've seen is an astronomical rise in the amount of sleep apnea that I've diagnosed over the last 20 years. And it's become actually a major public health issue in that it is also one of the major causes of train operators falling asleep in the accidents in trains and also truck driving accidents. Because I know it may surprise you, but train operators and truck drivers tend to have a few extra pounds. But what we know about our program and what we've seen in studies with sleep apnea is if you take a patient with sleep apnea and get them to lose 10% of their body weight, their sleep apnea will get 50% better. If they lose 20% of their body weight, their sleep apnea will get 90% better. And most patients can get rid of their mask and CPAP machines. So our program is extremely powerful for that. And interestingly, the National Transportation Safety Board now requires truck drivers, if their BMI is over 35 and their neck circumference is over 17, that they either have to get under BMI under 35 or get a sleep study before they'll get their license, because it's become such a health issue.
So there's no question that the need is out there. Every single one of us has people in our lives that we would want to help. And I think like Greg said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a weight problem that will bring them to you or that they may be wanting to awaken to something else in their life. But it may be weight, it may be cholesterol, it may be a need to sleep better, it may be a need for peace of mind or for financial benefit. I know for our family, Jamil asked what were some of the 3 things about me to know when we were going to speak today, and I said my favorite activity in the last month was that I got to go pen cows in Tucson with my family, and I screamed and hollered at those cows. Good stress relief situation. But I wouldn't have been able to do that in the past because we didn't have excess funds to be able to fund a family vacation when I was in my practice without Take Shape for Life. So I just would say Greg and I have both been demonstrations of personal transformation. I keep seeing what you're doing with your schedule and going, I'm watching over here. This guy is less and less in the office.
Well, yeah, as for most health professionals, I think we come into Take Shape for Life just looking at the health aspect. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you really don't see or understand this mind and finance part of it. In fact, I just want to get my patients healthy. And fortunately, Greg and Whitney convinced my wife, Denise, to go to national conference that first year and opened her eyes to not only us being able to help more people, but also the financial benefit. And so I no longer work in the ICU. I've re-engineered my practice to concentrate more on creating health than treating disease. I work 2.5 days a week. We've had We had 2 of our sons are physicians, and we paid off their medical school debt. They're debt-free. And we now, when we started in 2010, we had no grandkids. Now we have almost 6. So we spend at least 2 weekends a month traveling to see our grandkids. So it really has transformed our life and allowed us to create a life around what matters most to us.
So if I was going to wrap it up for Greg and I in this part of our talk, I think both of us had an interesting experience at the beginning of our health coaching that Greg, you just alluded to with conference. So if I can put one more thought in your mind, it's around this. If you were offered the opportunity of your life, if you could look back, you're 99 or 110, you're looking back at your life and you're looking at the pivotal moments in your life, I want you to think about that because you have one in front of you. Going to conference is a pivotal moment. And this scenario, just like here today, you've seen people whose lives have transformed, or you've heard stories. Conference is that on steroids. It's like all of a sudden you're walking, you cannot walk through conference without, literally I challenge you, if you go, take your phone and ask everybody their story that you walk by. Because the stories will be what sustain you in your dark moments when you go home, or in the times when you need encouragement. And you will never find a place where there are more stories of life, hope, and joy than conference. So I just would challenge you, for Greg and I, it literally was what spun us into being health coaches and seeing an opportunity for our patients. We didn't know that before going to conference. So if you can get yourself to conference, get there. However you have to get there, because that's a pivotal moment you'll look back at when you're 110 and thank me. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.